Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Uncivil Law for our weekly Tuesday Hangout question answer stream where I respond to YouTube comments, respond to comments from the chat, try to have a little dialogue with the community, try to give back a little bit in some way. Hope everyone's doing well. So we're going to respond to some comments. There are no questions this week in the Discord, so we will start with YouTube comments. And we'll just read them and respond to them as we go. And of course, if you have questions during the chat, you always can ask questions during the chat, so that's fine too. So some people really like the fact that the Capitol Riot series is continuing. Yeah, we will continue it at least as long as we, at least until we cover every state, I think is only fair. So that's fun. In response to the prurient offenders video, yeah, some people using YouTube as a platform can't use specific words, or the robot use "eat us, delete us" on their channels, which restricts creator speech and compels them to use specific language to avoid the purge. True that, which suggests there are publishers, not platforms. Sadly, no. I wish it was so, but no. This is a mistake. This is a mistaken but common misunderstanding of Section 230. It's not that you're a publisher or a platform. You can be both. It depends on your frame of reference at any given time. So this does not transform them into a publisher. There might be some boundary somewhere where that's possible, but there's no case law on it. So, no. It won't take action against YouTuber companies like them. Cough, Ted Cruz, cough. And if they did, they're focused on Twitter because censorship and right violations are more egregious. Which, is a reasonable place to go. If it's the worst thing, then why not? So any ruling on that would take even longer to trickle to YouTube. Maybe, maybe not. But if Twitter gets whacked over the side of the head, I'm pretty sure everyone else will notice too. But regardless, love this channel. Just be aware that Uncivil is using less direct words to avoid Skynet. I think everyone figured that out. I think everyone figured out that I wasn't using the word choices I was using because I thought they were the greatest words, but because I had to try to get around the algorithm, which works sometimes. So, yeah. I know you're doing states. I'd like to know if anyone from a Native American reservation are part of the riots. I don't know if they will specify that in a criminal complaint or not. But if it comes up, I'll let you know. Laura Laughlin says live the series, presumably means love. Examples how dangerous incomplete knowledge of your rights and obligations can be your own well-being and the well-being of others. Funny and sad. I think that's true. I think it is funny and sad. I think it's funny and sad that there is a substantial percentage of people who want to believe stories so much that they won't look into anything beyond it. It's a little bit distressing. Sheila says, so excited for Alaskan, filling in the map. That is now our objective. We will fill the map, and depending on our energy level, we may go past that, but that is now our working objective. Finish the map. I'm so glad Louisiana is still off the map. Yeah, I wouldn't bank on it, but for the moment, we haven't covered it. In response to the parent videos, rather than relationship, which apparently had the wrong connotations, perhaps a better choice would have been relations, which in the context would have been better. Parent relations would be more exacting and still wouldn't have killed you in the YouTube seems to believe is an algorithm. Yeah, I mean, I'm as may or may not be evident when I'm doing these rewordings, I'm doing them on the fly. I'm rewriting it in my head. So while I am considering my word choices, perhaps not with that level of precision, but noted, because it's a fair point. It's more relation than relationship. Fair. Little thumbs up action, that's nice. In response to the 49 Capitol riots, Judy says, I'm buying ninja clothing, and that will be my new thing. Covers me when I'm not doing anything at all. Even has face coverings. Fair enough, man. Awesome. Might as well turn the perversion of justice into a joke to get some views. Well, I don't think that there is any perversion of justice in what is happening to the Capitol rioters. I think you might be able to make a credible case that there's a perversion of justice in other people not being charged. As I pointed out on a different stream, one of the classic definitions of justice is people getting what they deserve. And someone pointed out that might also be the definition of karma, but I'm not an expert on karma, so I couldn't speak to what karma's definition is. But as to justice, it's what people getting what they deserve. So for the Capitol rioters, I don't see it as a perversion of justice. They did a very bad, and they are getting justice. And at this point, in my view, are being charged somewhat lightly. A lot of them are just being charged with trespassing and illegal parading. You could probably charge the whole lot with rioting and a whole bunch of other stuff. But the U.S. attorney hasn't gone that way, so maybe they're more merciful than me. But in any case, I don't think it's a perversion of rioting, or apologize, I don't think it's a perversion of justice, because these people are in fact getting what they deserve. They did a very bad. They tried to overthrow the government of the United States in a pretty direct way. So even if you think that the people in Portland, or Black Lives Matter, or Antifa, or insert other group, is not getting what they deserve, which is a credible argument, they are not getting what they deserve in a situation which is arguably less severe than this. For example, in Portland, as bad as trying to take over a federal courthouse is, I'd like to think that we can agree that trying to overtake the seat of the U.S. government is even worse. So, if you're upset that some other people are not getting what they deserve, maybe that's a perversion of justice. But as far as I'm concerned, not the Capitol rioters, because so far, it seems to me, based on what we've seen, that they're getting what they deserve. If not, getting some mercy, because I think they could be getting more. But then again, of course, these charges can be amplified or augmented. So maybe they'll get more later down the road. But it's enough to get you started, either way. I don't think it's a perversion of justice. Maybe don't with the rioting. How about that? How about if we just have a consistent perspective? Here's an idea. What if we have a consistent value? Our consistent value might be, for example, how about not with the rioting? How about not with the anarchy? How about not with the disruption of lawful activity? How about that's just universally bad regardless of who's doing it? Do I really care whether or not it's right-wing or Antifa or BLM who's storming the Capitol? Not really. Not in particular, because my principle doesn't overwhelm, or my teams doesn't overwhelm my principles, right? My principle is, this is bad. Do I change my opinion because it's right-wing or because it's Antifa or because BLM? I do not. I don't really care that much. I don't really care that much about their motivation, nor, strictly speaking, is motive an element of the crime, which is also another reason to not care, right? Intent is an element of a crime, but not motive, right? Your reasons are your own. Do I care what your reasons are? Not particularly. I do care that you did a bad and that you knew that you were doing a bad. And if you're like, I didn't know I was doing a bad, I'm like, really? You didn't know that, breaching in the U.S. Capitol and, shouting, let's string up some people was a problem, and participating in the mass rioting? You didn't see that one coming, didn't realize that you might be doing something that was fracturing some kind of law. I'm not saying that you necessarily knew that exactly what you were doing is illegal, because the law doesn't require that much. But you didn't have any conception that you were breaking some kind of law in some variety. I'm not buying this. So I don't really care why you were doing it, but I care that you did it with deliberation, so and now you can get the just punishment that you so righteously deserve for the rioting, of which I universally condemn. How neat. R.W. Bumble says, firebombing federal courthouse, firebombing mayor's apartment building full of people. That's pretty felonious. I do not disagree. Now, I can't really speak to the fact specific, because I don't really know what you mean by firebombing. But then again, I wasn't watching it that carefully, so I can't speak to what that is. But yes, that might be very illegal. But again, in our gradations of bad, I think, it's what's worse. Trying to throw, for example, a Molotov cocktail, let's assume that's what you mean by that. Is throwing a Molotov cocktail to federal courthouse worse than, trying to raid the seat of government during a time when they're counting the votes in order to conduct a peaceful transfer of power? Which of these is worse? At least in my hierarchy of bad, this strikes me as more bad, but that's me. Yeah. Yeah. For your information, Tim Ghana, aka Back Alaska, is from Alaska. I know we couldn't count him as Alaska because he didn't live in Alaska at the time. So he didn't get credit for that. He got credit for Arizona where he was domiciled. So yes, we knew that, but he didn't get credit for it. So now apparently he wants to move to Florida. Okay. He comes from a hardcore Christian sect, more like a cult that his parents are part of. He really believes in God and Jesus, even though he's an opportunist. His cheap weapon is positivity. Positivity is good. You should be positive. His ego bruises easily and often, but man, oh man, no matter what, he's always bounces back. Okay, well, I hope he learns something positive from this experience and becomes a better member of society for it. That would be a positive result of all this. So that would be fine. If you had to give him a job title, I'd say he's a very enthusiastic Christian camp counselor. Very. Okay. It's still hard to tell if he's a naive, backwards bumpkin or simply a petty grifter. One thing I'm sure of is he'll never stop loving Jesus. I seem to remember something in the Bible about giving unto Caesar what is Caesar's and giving unto God what is God's. So, not so sure about the raiding of the Capitol, how that fits into the teachings of Jesus, but, you know, whatever. You can figure that out on your own time. BLM did the same thing at the Oklahoma Capitol and always hear as crickets. Well, first of all, at the Oklahoma Capitol would tend to imply state law rather than federal law. And I can't speak to what the state of Oklahoma is doing with respect to its investigations, not for the least of reasons that state law, well, first of all, by its very nature, it's fractured. Because, you know, there's 50 states of it. And so it's a little bit harder to keep track of. At least for me, it's a little bit harder to keep track of. Because then I usually have to go into a state-specific system, and states are not always great about making things as open as the federal government is. The federal system is not great, but it's still much better in terms of the availability of information flow. The federal system leaves a lot to be desired. PACER leaves a lot to be desired. But as bad as it is, it's still better than any state system. And that's really sad that that's true, but it is. So, yeah, I can't speak to what they're doing in Oklahoma, but, you know, without more, the feds are unlikely to get involved because, you know, it's a state-level crime. Still bad, but also not overthrowing the seat of national government bad, probably. It's bad, but I don't know. In the hierarchy, But we can have fun debates on this, right? A Molotov cocktail in possession is felony. That's true. In fact, those two lawyers who were BLM Antifa, I think one of them was wearing a shirt at the time, were charged with that. In fact, are facing life in jail, as memory serves correctly. This wasn't during the Capitol riots. This was during, when was that? It was in D.C., but it wasn't the Capitol riots. But yeah, there's two lawyers. There are two lawyers who were in a car together, and they were photographed with a Molotov in their hand. And they were both charged, and they're both facing life in jail, as memory serves correctly. So, you know, it does happen. I should probably cover their story at some point, just because, you know, hilarity. But yeah, they're facing life in imprisonment for weapons of mass destruction, I believe. Still waiting for arrests on the Kavanaugh riots. A lot of those did happen. A lot of those people were charged with like grandstanding in the Capitol and stuff like that. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of breaches of buildings. The people who stood up in the middle of the hearings and protested, they were all arrested and fined and charged. It's a relatively minor offense. It's called haranguing. If you want to know the technical term for it, it's called haranguing. So when you stand up in the middle of a congressional hearing and you like shout up, we have a special name for it. It's called haranguing. It's a relatively low penalty. I think it's a maximum 6 months, but you know, for a first offense, it's going to be some kind of fine. But yeah, a lot of those people were fined. There were a lot of people who were in the one of the congressional buildings, but they seemed to have permission to be there. I don't know the exact details, but they seemed to have permission. They were circling the atrium with their signs, and they were behaving in a very lawful way. So I assume that they were there with permission, so that didn't apply. There were a bunch of people who were trying to. My personal favorite during the Kavanaugh hearings were the people that were trying to beat on the front doors of the Supreme Court. Those like 13-ton brass doors on the front of the Supreme Court. Trying to beat on those. That's just hilarious. So I think a lot of those guys got charged, but the charges were relatively minor because they didn't do the same things. They did different things, and those things were charged, and a lot of those people got fined. So that happened. How's my mental state? It's pretty good. Thank you for asking. If Texas allows gun carry, will all the forecasted battle and spear attacks come to an end? I don't know. But yeah, constitutional carry is being debated, so that'll be fun. Why 13-ton doors? Well, won't we know? I think they're mostly there for the look. But, one of the sad things of September 11th, there were many sad things, one of the sad things of September 11th is before September the 11th, when you went into the U.S. Supreme Court, you went in through the front doors. Now you only come out through the front doors. When you go into the building, now there's a side entrance that you go through for security, and you don't go in through those doors anymore, which is kind of sad because there was something very, very ennobling about, physically climbing the steps and going through those majestic, huge doors. It doesn't quite have the same thing when you're going in through a side door with a metal detector. It doesn't have quite the same regal feel to it, Something disappointing about that, so yeah. Why does the Supreme Court need 13-ton doors? I don't know that they need them. It's just what they put in there because they look badass. So, why not? The term constitutional carry is conclusory and presumptuous. I don't understand how it's either conclusory or presumptuous. Because your argument is that all carry is inherently constitutional. Is that the idea that you're going for? I don't know that that's true in even a Second Amendment originalist frame. The nature of what regulations are possible is obviously a matter of historical debate, but to imply that all carry is constitutional is somewhat improper in my view. You have to look more into how the right was understood historically. Pardon me. In response to the video on Robert Chapman, you should definitely make profile pictures like this and do a future video in copycat outfit. An unkept beard and a few racist tattoos will really cement your appeal to the ladies. I think I'm going to take a pass, but thank you. If we're betting on states we won't find, I'll call Vermont and Oregon. I'm pretty sure we'll get Oregon, but Vermont is more likely. But we already got New Hampshire, didn't we? And they're neighbors, so we'll see. I feel like there has to be at least one state not to have a resident involved. Now we got Hawaii already, so we got that involved. When the law review turns fast review, Joe may be dying. That's funny. Why is my thing stop scrolling? In response to the 50th video in our Capitol Riot series, I think they're charging hundreds, so we're waiting for you to catch up. I'm definitely behind, but I don't know how far we'll go on this because, we'll probably finish the states up, and I don't know if we'll go beyond that. Maybe there's really interesting ones, but I think maybe we've exhausted the series after about 50, so we'll see. In response to Hogue Law joining me, my favorite podcast format is two hosts having a conversation. So I really enjoy seeing all the videos you do with other attorneys. Well, thank you. I really enjoy all those conversations too. I really enjoy the conversations I have on a weekly basis with Nate the Lawyer and Legal Bites. I really enjoy talking to Nick Rekieta from time to time. I enjoy talking to Hogue Law. I sent an email to Emily, see if she wants to get back on. I really enjoy those conversations. They're a lot of fun. And we'll keep looking to expand them. And Attorney Tom, I still need to get him on at some point. He had expressed some interest, so I need to follow up back with that. Get Attorney Tom on. That'll be fun. But yeah, I really, really enjoy that. I think it's really great that we can have these conversations. It's in everyone's mutual interest as far as I'm concerned. It helps every channel grow. It helps audiences learn more. It helps the entire medium grow. So I really, really enjoy it and hope to do more of it. But thank you. It's very nice of you. All we need to do is ban Facebook and Twitter altogether. Yeah, that seems unlikely. I realize this issue is not child parent, but I couldn't believe a 20-year-old man was convicted of pedophilia with a 13-year-old. Well, if you can't believe that, you have not been keeping up on modern laws. So, yeah. In response to the purring offenders having to exercise self-censorship in a case about censorship, it's a thing. We do what we can. Abel Baker says if everyone clicks the button, maybe we can get the algorithm to help. Yeah, please remember to click the like button. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Abel. That's very nice of you. Learned a new word today for parent. Always glad to help. In response to the 8-year-old dying, since when did school employees cease being mandatory reporters? I couldn't speak to the relevant state law, but you might very well be right. So, that's, good stuff. Then someone said, this is really hard stuff, shine a light over it. And I think it's important to shine light over things like that. Obviously, you don't want it to become all the time. But, when there's really compelling stories out there, it's helpful to bring attention to it because, who else is going to at some degree? Have I talked about Boogie yet? Not particularly. So as I vaguely understand it from listening to reports, so this is like 2 levels of hearsay. Well, as I vaguely understand it, Boogie, the YouTube creator, was in a sort of ongoing war of words with, I believe, another YouTube creator. And they had been saying some things to each other in sort of escalating fashion. And I believe this other guy showed up at his house. And Boogie, I believe, fired a sort of warning shot, which is problematic, and was arrested for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, something like that. So that's my understanding of the factual posture. I further understand that the other guy who was involved in this had made some very threatening overtures and threatening statements, which would give Boogie additional reason to have apprehension. But, so what will happen? I don't know. I'd imagine it's going to be a plea down because of the aggravating will be mitigating from Boogie's point of view. Because the mitigating factors from Boogie's point of view that somewhat ameliorates his actions. So that seems to be what was in the cards. But, as more happens, we'll find out. But, it obviously depends on his criminal history, but I'm assuming he doesn't have a criminal history. I'm assuming that he will get a fairly favorable deal, particularly because of the statements that are made. The charges might be dropped completely. It was only a $5,000 bond. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, that's what I understand right now. You see a stream with good logic? That might be fun. Wasn't the Boogie thing months ago? Why so long to arrest? My understanding, I couldn't speak to why so long to arrest. My understanding is the arrest warrant was just issued. Why did it take so long for the arrest warrant to be issued? Couldn't speak to it. Because it wasn't perhaps urgent compared to other things. The police investigated it and just wound up in a queue, and this is how long it took to issue the arrest warrant. So that would be my guess. It's just issues of efficiency. No one was shot. No one was injured. Someone had to file a report. Someone had to investigate. Seems plausible. So, I don't know, but we'll see what happens next. Laura Loomer says, of course she thinks her band is a conspiracy. Maybe they just don't like you, Laura. Lori says, you and everyone who participated in the riot, that's what you did, on January 6th should be locked up. I assume when Lori says you, she doesn't mean me. I assume she means Joshua Matthew Black. Unless Lori thinks I was involved, in which case, no. I was actually here streaming at the time with Nate. So, no. The lighting is great, gives more color to your face and highlights your hair color. Yeah, so we've been playing with the light more. So we took the light and we moved it off axis and moved it to a 45 degrees so it's not shining right on my face. So that was good. Also, I changed a few settings on the camera to increase the sharpness. So I don't know if that's helping at all, but we tried that. So, and also, I reduced I increased the aperture or decreased it. Which one? I made the number bigger. So it was 1.4 and now I think it's 2.8. So it's double. Yeah, 2.8. So made the aperture a little bit, made the number bigger. So to make the blur less intense in the background. So all that we did, and it looks pretty good. So the fill light is doing its job at the moment. Stephanie is here. Hello, Stephanie. How are you doing? Glad to have you here as always. I hope everything is well. As far as why we're importing drug-sniffing dogs, my guess is cost. My uncle trains police dogs and told me how they're extremely expensive, not just because of training, but regulation. I have no idea what the regulated impact of importing a police dog is, but that's at least plausible theory, so why not? Sure. Matthew says pre-recorded out by stream. It would be hard for it to be pre-recorded since we're actually commenting on it live. You're not helping, Matt. Pet patient veterinarian confidentiality isn't as trivial as sounding to me. One wouldn't want strangers to know what medications one pet has been prescribed for many of the same reasons that apply to one kids. Okay. I never really thought about it, but sure, I'll take your word for it. It never occurred to me to practice veterinary medicine telemed. If you can do it with people, why not animals? Well, we kind of discussed that during the discussion of the court case. The court thought of reasons. So, hopefully that explained that. So, using the services of a website is not a constitutional right. That's true. Unless it's the government trying to stop you. My office building in New York City had a manually operated freight elevator. Yeah, that makes sense. In response to the Fifth Circuit, police tasing a person soaked in gasoline. Excessive nope as it was non-lethal weapon, but completely unreasonable as it was lethal in this situation. Any grade 10 science students would know that. Right, so in that particular situation, the police used a taser on a guy who they watched the guy douse himself in gasoline and then tased him. Seems like a strange sequence of events. That was a strange one. The guy is inside his house. I believe they're called there because there's reports he might be suicidal. I'm going back in my mind, but I think that's right. And when he gets there, he has a gas can in his hand. And at some point, he pours the gasoline onto himself. And the police don't decide to intervene at this point. And then he breaks out a lighter. And then they tase him. And he gets set on fire. So it was this very strange sequence of events. Stephanie says the importing dog theory is about as viable as the I'm not a citizen morons. Well, I'm not an expert on that, but it strikes me as more plausible. I couldn't speak to it in detail, obviously, but it doesn't strike me as inherently absurd that importing a dog might be a cost-saving mechanism. It seems a little unlikely, but perhaps there's ways to do the training and the man hours are cheaper and somehow it works out or something. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't strike me as quite the level of insane of I'm not really a citizen, sovereign citizen territory. I at least thought about it as, well, that could be a factor. Cost might be a factor. It's at least reasonable. As opposed to I'm a sovereign citizen, which makes no sense. And I hate those people with such burning passion. In response to Texas vet denied ability to treat telemedicine, total non-brainer. Sounds about right. Is voiding the cost of regulation a good thing or bad thing? Well, the idea would be, yeah, because I don't know how that would work. But the idea would be that the kennels have to be regulated a certain way, but you could do it overseas and it would be cheaper and somehow would comply with the ultimate end objectives or blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, but if it wound up being that way, then people are importing to save the cost. It's arbitrage, kind of. So if it worked out, I mean, is it inherently insane? I don't know. How much does it cost to train a drug sniffing dog in the US? No idea. What kind of regulations have to be in place for the trainers? No clue. Does the cost cheaper overseas? Maybe. Would it make sense to import them from overseas? Maybe. Would they still be able to comply with the relevant tests? Maybe. Does it make sense? Might. I don't know. But yeah, if there's a cheaper way to do it, it might be a solution. Stephanie says, I know. That's why I use the example. I do know the cost numbers, and you know how I know about it. Ha ha ha. Fair enough, Stephanie. I am corrected factually by Stephanie. Stephanie corrects me factually and says, no, actually, Kurt, I know these facts, and this doesn't make any sense to me because of knowledge of the facts. I'm willing to defer to the facts to Stephanie. Like, yeah, I actually know these numbers, and no. I believe you. I stand corrected. Fair enough. It's a stupid idea. Okay. In response to Texas vet, someone just commented algo food, meaning algorithm food. Thank you, Chris Kelly. That's very, very nice of you. Your interest says, what is the legal theory and what can't? It looks like it got cut off. I'd have to go back and watch it. But it's possible that I jump thoughts midstream because that sometimes happens. Did Kurt sabotage Nick's new camera so the Uncivil show would look better than Lost Planning? Oh, I didn't sabotage it. I just made some adjustments on my end. In response to Nick getting a fancy new camera, I didn't change my camera, but I did change some settings. I changed some settings on the camera, and I changed the lighting to make it a little bit better. So you'll have to decide which camera is better. I think Nick's has more sharpness. I'm not sure how he's getting more sharpness, but yeah, I did make some changes to make things a little bit better. I have a key light now again, and change some settings and sharpness and stuff like that. So, can't let Nick have a better stream than me. In response to legal wrong, where I apparently said I only have to watch this once, thumbs up earned. True that. In response to the Facebook ban. So in other words, shut the F up about voter fraud and we might let you have your account back. Something like that. It seems they essentially minimally rehashed the impeachment trial and came to a different verdict, which they can because they're a civil institution. Well, first of all, they're not even strictly speaking a civil institution, since civil institution could still be implied to be government, because government does have civil institutions as well as criminal. So they're not even a civil institution, they're a private institution. So yeah, they can come to whatever verdict they want because, They're free. The thing that greatly concerns me is where I perceive the logical conclusion of all this ending up. I agree with you. The logical conclusion is not pretty. The logical conclusion is everyone gets censored and no one's left. And I think we're even starting to see that to some degree. We're even starting to see some people who are more commonly associated with the left beginning to express some concern. So there's some issues there. Seems greater the public becomes oppressed, the more options to fight it will become. Anyone dissenting in the current system would deem it a potential threat to national security, as the words would be considered incitement to revolution, thus violence and harm to individuals on a national scale. I at least at the moment, Facebook is able to have whatever criteria they want, for better or worse. So, in response to how to get the death penalty by unforced error, someone said, why does he look like Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad? I don't think I look like Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad. Not seeing that one. Lighting setup looks good. A closer rear wall or green screen backdrop might fix up the contrast between background and focal point. I changed the settings in the camera to make the contrast more neutral. I tried the green screen background. I still have the green screen. I just have never found a green screen I like. Every green screen I look, fine, just looks artificial. So, you know. In response to the conspiracy to throw off an elected Texas judge off the bench. So that was a pretty interesting story. This woman was elected judge. She was a critic of someone, I think the prosecutor's office. She was elected, and then basically there's a conspiracy to get her off the bench, right? Because the prosecutor's office didn't like her. So to cap this all off, the judge victim was forced off the bench and had her license revoked due to the conviction. It was, of course, reinstated when she was declared innocent. However, she's barred from running for a judge seat because she's not been an attorney in good standing for the last 4 years. Interesting. Even though the appeal judge said that any legal disabilities rendered against appellant as a result of the convictions are void in order to set aside, immediately be released and relieved from all legal disabilities. This immunity and stuff needs limits. Couldn't speak to that specific issue, but yeah, I mean, that might be another lawsuit unto itself, but yeah. In response to the Chauvin thing, in what way would double jeopardy come into this? You can't be tried twice with a crime that flows from the same act. Hypothetically, if Chauvin gets an appeal and a new trial is granted in Minnesota, does the federal government have the constitutional authority? Yes, because separate sovereigns. Connor gives the right answer. Yeah, separate sovereigns. Double jeopardy only applies to the same crime. And they're different crimes because they're different sovereigns. All right, in response to my lighting issues, apparently, screen is flat, not you. Dark background with too bright, too many luma, and warm light makes you look two-dimensional because of lack of shadow. Happens to stage actors. That's why they wear very heavy makeup to compensate. Think your temperature's a little too warm with your skin tone and color choices used in your background clothing color. Not bad because the temperature lights make it look a little off and flat. Washes the colors resulting from them being more off, like a flat paint, rather than vivid or lifelike. If you go to a colder light, more blue, it should correct for that. The light I have now, I believe, is 2800 or 2900 Kelvin, but I need that color temperature bulb because it's right in my eyes, and if I use a warmer light, it will hurt my eyes too much. So I think this is about as warm as I'm really able to use for long periods of time. So we'll make do. In response to the shadows thing, I don't know what we could do there. I don't know what we can do there, but yeah, maybe I am a little bit silhouetted against the background. We could try to put some light on back there or something, but we'll play with it some more and see what we can do. Color temperature is a bit off. We've been playing with color temperature. Feedback, I think it looks a bit fierce, and you could do it dialing down the brightness on the video by a notch or two. You could also be out of focus, which is really highlighted by how bright and everything is. I'm not out of focus because I have autofocus on my lens, and it's working, so it's not a problem. And the lens is pretty good. The lens is a Sigma, as is pointed out in my description, so the lens is pretty good. So the camera's pretty good, so it's about as good as we're going to do. Red is off-putting. Fair enough. Sanchez versus Bashaki for response to probably the failure to intervene. Seventh Circuit in 1972. Should we look up a case on the fly and see if it has anything to teach us? Hold on. I'm not wearing orange. I'm not wearing Clemson orange. This is actually a red shirt. Oh, Bird versus Bashiki. You gave me the wrong name. Let's see. All please are color law, personal injury violation, blah 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 blah. Correct standard, directed verdict. Okay, the standard which judges might determine as grand verdicts, blah 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 blah. Okay. So this looks like it might be promising on point. So in a Supreme Court case, Monroe versus Pape, Mr. Douglas, Justice Douglas, stated in the opinion of the court, 42 U.S.C. 1983 should be read against the background of tort liability that makes a man responsible for the natural consequences of his actions. Applying the principles of general tort law to actions brought pursuant to 1983 may result in the imposition of liability and damages both for malfeasance and nonfeasance. So that's 1983, which is civil liability. Okay, how about criminal liability? And it doesn't speak to that issue. So I appreciate whoever gave me that comment on YouTube, but it doesn't speak to the issue. It speaks to the civil liability for 42 U.S.C. 1983, but not the criminal liability for 18 U.S.C. 253, 251, or whatever it is. I say both the state and federal government going after someone for the same offense is double jeopardy. I realize the Supreme Court disagrees, but that doesn't make them right. Well, the issue that you have to solve there, if you believe that, which is a fair thing to believe, is what do you do if multiple different states? What if you commit an offense in multiple different states? So a class or an analogy, I don't know if it's a classic analogy, but an analogy is suppose you kidnap someone and you throw them in the back of your car. And suppose you travel through 5 states. And the question might be, which of the 5 states can prosecute you? Under your theory. Because, so you don't think the federal government should be able to prosecute them because double jeopardy. So the question might be, like, which 5 states can you get them at? The first state where you pick them up in? Or does no other state have any interest in this? Seems a little bit... So the thing that you have to sort of factor into this conclusion is, if you think that the federal government charging someone for something they did in a state is problematic, what about 2 different states charging somebody for offenses that cross lines, or states or crimes which are incomplete in any one state? So how would that work? But you might be able to develop a coherent theory that works around all those problems. I'm not saying you can't. It's just something to think about. In response to the effing thinking emoji, the only people whose rights are being limited is Derek Chauvin and the other officers. Chauvin was trialed on a guilty till proven innocent standard. No. The prosecution merely held it was plausible that Chauvin killed Floyd. Yeah. By either positional asphyxia or neck blockage without factually proving either. No. Defense raised a plausible possibility that George Floyd was having circulatory issues due to highly critical blood pressure and recent intake of meth, a potentially legal drug. But that's not enough in this specific trial. The defense would have to prove innocence beyond a reasonable doubt. And the answer here is eggshell skull. Right? So defense raised the possibility that Floyd was having circulatory issues due to high critical blood pressure and recent intake of meth. Sure. It just doesn't answer the question. It doesn't answer the question, as I made pains to point out, or tried to point out. The issue isn't whether something else killed Floyd, but whether Chauvin killed Floyd. And multiple different things can kill Floyd, right? According to the law in Minnesota, Chauvin only has to be a substantial contributing factor. So it's not quite but for causation. It's a little bit more than that, but not a huge amount more. So but for causation would be if something happened, then this other thing would have happened. So a but for cause of Floyd dying would be Floyd was there at the time. Or Floyd got up that morning, or Floyd made any of 100 different decisions. Like there's 100, or Floyd gave that potentially counterfeit bill. Maybe he didn't even know it was counterfeit. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't know it was counterfeit. Maybe if he had reached for a different 20 in his wallet, it wouldn't have happened. So there's a whole bunch of but for causes, right? So we need to show a little bit. We need to show not that Chauvin is a mere but for cause, but for what Chauvin did. We need to show a little bit more than that, because true but for causation would be just a contributing factor, but we need a substantial contributing factor. So he needs to, and what makes something substantial? Well, that it's meaningful, that it's, has operative weight. So did his heart disease kill Floyd? Sure. Did the drugs kill Floyd? Sure. Did Chauvin kill Floyd? Sure. Can I believe all those things at the same time? Of course I can. Because that's the relevant legal standard. You take the victim as you find them. If you assault someone and they die because of a condition, even if that condition is self-inflicted, then sucks to be you. This wouldn't normally hurt a fly. Well, that's interesting and all, but did it hurt this person? Yes. Well, then, sucks to be you. You take the consequences of your actions. Those consequences may or may not be predictable, but you are at fault for them, and you have to take all the consequences that flow from them. So, yeah, the defense raised a whole bunch of other things. It's just that none of those things really speak to the issue legally. I mean, in order for this to work, you'd have to believe that those things basically, if not quite solely, but almost killed, and that basically Chauvin is an irrelevancy. So it's not that he is but he's irrelevant. He's an irrelevancy. That's what you have to believe. And I don't know, man. I can't get there. I couldn't get there. I have proof beyond a reasonable doubt as far as I'm concerned. The state provided more than enough evidence as far as I'm concerned. He had his body weight on him for a substantial amount of body weight for a significant period of time on concrete. His chest cavity was being pressed into the sidewalk, which you know is fairly unforgiving. And positional asphyxia, knee on the neck. I mean, you don't even necessarily, you see, this is their thing too. I don't even necessarily need to know which of the many, many things it is, right? In order to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's another thing too. Like, I don't even need to know for sure to be able to conclude it's one of them beyond a reasonable doubt. That's all I have to do is conclude one of them beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't even have to tell you which one. That's the legal standards we're playing with here. It's a pain in the ass. Don't commit crimes. If you commit crimes, you might be on the hook for way, way more than you bargained for. That can happen. So don't do it in the first place. So yeah, it's like, I don't need to know exactly what Chauvin did. Was it his body weight? Was it the knee on the neck? Was it the positional asphyxia? Was it this? Was it this? Was it this? I don't know. Nor do I have to figure it out. All I have to know, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, it was something he did. That was a substantial factor. I'm there, even if you think the drugs are also a substantial factor, even if you think the heart disease is a substantial factor, even if you think his high blood pressure is a substantial factor. You know, there can be more than one substantial factor. This is not a mutually exclusive thing. So, it isn't guilty until proven innocent. He was innocent until proven guilty. The question isn't, is he innocent until proven guilty? The question is, proven guilty of what? Under what law? By what standards? What is the law? Well, you need to prove an intentional assault. Did he intend to assault him? Of course he did. What are the alternatives? Accident? Mistake? Duress? Of course it's intentional. What else is there? Was he legally justified? Some point it expired. Do I need to tell you exactly when? Nope. I don't. To know it ended somewhere in that interim. It's somewhere in there. Don't need to tell you exactly when. I'm good. You know, don't commit crimes. This can happen when you commit crimes. Don't do bad things. And your attorney will not have to inform you how dark it can get. It can get pretty dark, pretty fast. You know, hooray logic. Yeah, that's right, Becca. That's right. Hooray logic, right? Right? We can do this. We can do this unemotionally. We can do this very coldly. In fact, we should do it coldly. We must do it coldly. Justice is cold. Justice is very cold. It's very cold-blooded. It's dispassionate to the extreme. We just look at the facts. What are the facts? Well, here are all the facts. Here's the entire factual picture. Did Chauvin commit the intentional assault? Of course he did. Of course he did. Of course it was intentional. Was he legally justified at the very start? Yes. Was he not legally justified at the very end? No. Do I need to tell you exactly what moment his justification expired? I do not. I do not need to tell you exactly when, because all I need to know, conclude beyond a reasonable doubt, is at some point in between it expired. I'm there. Can I tell you exactly when? No. Do I have to be able to? No. It's like, it's the rough equivalent. It's a rough equivalent of the medical, or it's a rough equivalent of a preliminary medical examination of a dead person, which tells you he died sometime between 9 and 11. It's like, do I need to know exactly what moment? No, not really. I can tell you it's between these intervals. You know, does it matter? Does it matter for the purposes of this exercise? No. So that's roughly the equivalent. The medical examiner says that's sometime between 9 and 11. It's like, well, all those numbers are equally good. It's like, yeah, it was sometime between Sometime between minute 3 and minute 9. Somewhere in there, somewhere. It's all equally good. Yeah. Jurors had access to news outlets and social media right in the palm of their hands. The only thing stopping them was the judge saying, please don't. And their oath, and the fact that the law presumes that they're going to follow it. Jurors were potentially exposed to activists who were trying to locate and identify them. Due to the media publication, the jury selection was poor. I don't know about that. I mean, they went through a fairly thorough voir dire process. It was pretty expansive. And they were not capable of keeping activist jurors who lied to enter the trial at the bench as currently proven. That is not proven. It is suggested. Jurors convicted Derek in 2 contradictory charges, proving they did not follow the guidelines when weighing their decisions. No. They're not. Well, murder 2 and murder 3 are a bit contradictory the way I read them. The way that the jury was charged, no. But that's a failure of the jury being charged properly. So that's not the jury's bad. That's the judge's bad. So that's one of the reasons I don't think murder 3 can stand. The way that I read the law, and who currently disagrees with me, would be the judge and the attorney general currently disagree with me. But the way I read the law, yes, murder 2 and murder 3 are mutually incompatible. You can't have murder 2 and murder 3 at the same time. The way that I understand the law. So that's my understanding. And so the murder 3 charge will be thrown out because the murder 3 charge is the one with the legal defect. The murder 3 charge is one with the legal defect. The murder 2 charge is perfectly legally sound. And the jury convicted him of that, so that's enough, you know? And as Phil pointed out, the cause of death was up for the jury to decide. That's also true. Like, it's a question of fact, right? So the jury concluded it. As a matter of fact, that's a fact now. That's how, you know. I'm there. I understand the jury. I'm there. I have my issues with murder 3. We've discussed in length. I don't think it will work legally. We'll find out on appeal how right I am. Will I be proven to be a genius? I don't know. We'll find out. Lighting looks good. Thank you. Shaman was handed a raw deal. Not really. Not anymore. You know, not any more than 100 other criminals' names who you don't know. Or more than that. There are a lot of criminals who get very similar deals. Very raw deals. Sometimes criminals get lucky, too, for that matter. You can luck your way into it. There's like a bell curve, right? Sometimes criminals get really lucky. Sometimes not. You don't want to find out where you're going to be on that distribution, man. If you don't commit the crime, you won't have to find out where you're on the distribution. Which, will you be in the middle or will you be on a tail end? And if so, which one? Let's not find out. Thank you, Corey, for becoming a member. That's very, very kind. T-Travel says, what about strict liability crimes? It's even worse when you don't have to have the intention to commit a crime. Well, this is a quibble between me and Nate the lawyer, because I don't agree with how he expresses this. I agree with what he's trying to say, but I don't agree with his language. Nate the lawyer has described felony murder as a strict liability crime. That's not really correct, because you still have to have intent. The intent is just for the underlying felony rather than the death. And the idea is because you did the dangerous felony, someone died, you're responsible for that, because it's kind of an intent follows the bullet theory. It's sort of the idea, right? So it's like if I shoot at person A and person B dies, intent follows the bullet, right? So legally I intend to kill person B, right? My intent is in fact to kill person A. I actually kill person B. My intent legally flows to B. The intent follows the bullet. This also incidentally would help you in a self-defense charge, because if I have self-defense against A, but actually hit B, it's still self-defense because my intent still flows. So it can help you too. But in any case, what was I saying? Oh yes, about strict liability for crimes. So the intent, it's kind of an intent follows the bullet idea. So your classic scenario is you go commit a robbery of a convenience store or a liquor store, right? And someone gets shot in the course of that robbery. So it's kind of an intent follows the bullet idea. It's like you created the situation. You created the dangerous situation. from which this death occurred. So you have culpability for all the bad stuff that occurred. Your intent was only to commit a robbery, but someone's dead now. You may not have wanted that result going in, but then again, remember, motive is not an element of the crime, right? So when you talk about what you want, that's motive, right? This is such a geeky point, and even lawyers get confused on this, right? Because it's the difference between intent and motive, right? I go into a liquor store to rob the liquor store. So let's discuss the difference between intent and motive. We can discuss so many different topics at once. I go into the store to rob the liquor store. What's the difference between intent and motive? Well, intent speaks to my decision to perform the act. My motive speaks to my reasons. So what is my intent? Well, my intent is to rob the liquor store because I told you that, right? I told you. I went into the liquor store to rob the liquor store. So I told you my intent. My intent is to rob the liquor store. Okay, great. So what is my motive? Well, I haven't told you what my motive is. I mean, you could guess, right? You might make some reasonable guesses. Maybe my motive is money. That seems like the most plausible, but is it necessarily the motive? No, I mean, there could be other motives. What other motives might there be? Well, maybe I'm a competing store. Maybe I'm trying to drive him out of business. I don't really want the money. I'm just trying to really kind of scare him out of business. Maybe I'm just trying to show him his place is dangerous to scare the customers away. Or maybe I'm trying to impress a girl. Impress a girl is always a good choice. I don't really care about the money. I'm trying to impress a girl. That's always a good choice if you're trying to pick a motive, right? So, yeah, my motive, who knows? My intent is to rob the store. So, yeah, when you go to rob the store, your intent is to rob the store. Your reasons, you may not want the money necessarily. You're going to take the money. You may not necessarily want it, but you're going to because that's part of the robbery. But yeah, so you may not want anyone to die, but then again, we don't really care about your motives now, do we? We don't. Legally, we don't care about motives. We care about your intent. Your intent was to commit the robbery. Great. You commit a robbery. You're now creating an inherently dangerous situation. Someone died from that. Well, you're a little bit responsible. So, I don't quite see it as a true strict liability crime. The only strict liability crime I know of, and it's not true in every state. Some states disagree on this. I think it's about half the states. But about half the states have strict liability for statutory rape. Not all states, mind you, but about half, maybe less. I'd have to double check the numbers. But that's the only one that comes immediately to mind. That's common. Anyways, that was a lot of divergent discussion on a lot of topics. Stephanie says you're trying to impress a girl with a rare whiskey. Who's trying to impress Stephanie, man? Abel says good excuse. I'm sure the jury will understand. I don't know what you mean by excuse. I'm trying to explain things legally because this is a legal education channel. So I'm trying to describe things like what is the difference between intent and motive? Here's the legal distinction. I tried to give you an example to illustrate the point. I tried to point out how intent follows the bullet, and this is kind of some version of that, and there's a logic there. And does the jury understand all that? Well, the jury doesn't, strictly speaking, have to understand that, because the jury's role is fact, not law. The jury only has to determine the facts. The jury doesn't have to determine law. They're instructed on law. So does the jury understand all that? Not really. Nor do they have to strictly. They just have to, apply the law. And they were given instructions, and at least according to the one juror who testified, at least one juror really wanted to go through the instructions in some detail to make sure they're getting it right. And good for them. So, oh, Matt, why you robbed it? Yeah. You're trying to impress a girl with a rare whiskey. Fair enough. I just buy it, Stephanie. Legal Beagle said, if we learn from other misfortunes, you'll learn S-load for my life. Fair enough. Excuse is motive. Well, not legally, because the word excuse has, I'm sorry to be such a pain in the ass, the word excuse has a legal meaning. So let's just stick with motive. If it were truly an excuse, then yeah, it would get you off the hook. Technically speaking, the crime doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. You want an example of excuse? Duress. Because it nullifies intent. Right? That's legally an excuse. So now we get to have a side discussion about legal. So we get to have a discussion about the difference between justification and excuse. How fun. So justification is, I did the crime, but I had a good reason, a legally sufficient reason. Excuse is, I didn't actually commit the crime at all. And a classic example of excuse is duress. I force you to commit the crime. Right? I'm holding a gun to your head, to your wife's kid, to your child's head, so forth and so on. That would be an example of duress, right? Go into the store and rob the store, or I'm going to blow your kid's brains out, right? That would qualify as duress. So if you go into the store and rob the store, right, you could argue, I didn't actually have intent. I didn't actually have intent because I never formed the intent because I was forced into it, duress. So it nullifies an element of the crime. It nullifies the element of intent. And because you don't have the element of intent, it's a legal excuse. Justification is, I did it, but I had a really good reason. Can I think of a justification for robbing the liquor store? This will be fun. Is there even one that hypothetically arises? I don't know about, well, if it's not armed robbery, maybe. armed robbery would be harder. I need this alcohol right now because medical necessity. Let's go with that. That I need it right this second, so I don't have time to pay for it. So I go into the liquor store and rob the liquor in order to give it to a guy because he needs the liquor right this second or he's going to die. Let's accept all that premise because that's the only way this example is going to work. But yeah, that would be a justification. I did it for the good of the order. I robbed you because he needed that liquor right now or he was going to die. Yeah, okay, let's press on before we think about that much harder. All right. I'm not sure I like the court's ruling in response to the death penalty. Oh, we covered all that. We scrolled up somehow by a lot when we shifted pages. Wood alcohol poisoning? Oh, yeah. There you go. Okay. Because wasn't that like an episode of House or something where the guy was drinking... Was he drinking printer toner or something ridiculous? And the alcohol actually served as a counter to it. So the alcohol actually was medicinal because the alcohol actually countered whatever it was in his body. Wasn't it like an episode of House or something? Because it was a guy on death row who had taken some substance and they couldn't execute him, and so the treatment actually was giving him alcohol. So Dr. House tricked him into drinking alcohol. So yeah, whatever that situation is. So if you see a guy drinking printer toner or whatever it is, and you rob the liquor store in order to counter it medically, then okay, that might work. Yeah, okay, yeah. So something like that, yeah. Uh, when you see cops take people's cars in movies to follow a fleeing suspect, is that legal? Yeah, probably. It's a public necessity. It's not actually even a Fifth Amendment taking under traditional law. It's like a public safety exception. So yeah, they can take your car and you probably don't get any money for it. It's very sad. Laura Loomer misspelled Media Matters? Quite possibly. Didn't the Flintstones have manual operators? Yeah, they used dinosaurs, as memory serves, to be their elevator. But yes. If Congress doesn't know how to law, maybe we should get more lawyers in Congress. Politics ruins everything. That's what they say. We need to cut off Grandpa's leg, circa 1840. You got the right idea. You got the right idea. I would not, do not try at home. Do not try at home is my recommendation, but these are some ideas, right? Greg Polanski says he's thoroughly blazed and thoroughly enjoying my content. Hopefully that doesn't imply that to enjoy my content you must necessarily be thoroughly blazed, but I'm glad you're enjoying it in any case. Maybe it means that my content is so strong it can withstand being thoroughly blazed. Yeah, let's go with that interpretation. Yeah, as is often the case in response to manual elevators, the Supreme Court isn't telling the legislature how the law should be written. It simply interprets what the law as written states. If our legislature wasn't so dysfunctional, many decisions that result in public outcry because they're unfair would be followed by an amendment to the law and subsequent budget legislation process. You know, I feel like one of Congress's jobs should just be to review every single Supreme Court decision because the vast majority of them are statutory, right, or regulatory, and the Congress can change those. So there should be should be someone's job somewhere to write a bill to basically undo every Supreme Court decision or modify it in light of it. But they don't seem to do that, which is okay. There's a lot of decisions that they could revise it. In response to manual elevator operators still viable employment. If someone has a green porch light on, means person has PTSD, and we may freak out with loud pew pew. Stephanie, does having a green porch light signify PTSD? And then Jason Davis responded, thanks, some idiots here in Tennessee who have green porch lights and lights on their home because they think it's Christmas year round. Or too's lazy to take them down. By the way, Kurt rocks, doesn't he? Yes. Yes, he does. Hope he realizes how much we enjoy learning how he presents in such a humorous way. It's always nice to have a fan. BP finally got on Discord. Glad to have you there. It seems a bit like Facebook rules are written by the same folks that came up with sources. Maybe there's some commonality there. I haven't thought about it really hard, but yeah. Blue is cops family, red is working girl. Okay. I never thought about these things, but all right. I mean, I heard about the red light. Not so sure about a red porch light, but red light inside. Okay. Stephanie says, just like teal pumpkins are supposed to mean food allergy free for Halloween, but we don't change our method approach based on abortion. You know, I would think not. I would not think that was a relevant factor, but you would know. So figure we'd ask. Truth to Liberty says, I recently had a case removed, which is the term for transferring it, to federal court. I filed a motion to remand, but it's yet to be ruled on. Question. Do rulings of state court before removal act as binding rulings in federal court? And if when remanded for lack of jurisdiction, do the pleadings and or rulings in the federal court remain valid and get transferred to state court? Well, first of all, this is a individualized legal question. So I can only answer this generally. I can't answer it as it would relate to your specific case. So as it relates to your specific case, you'd want to relate to your lawyer, because 3 gajillion facts may alter the legal analysis, as I'm sure that you've appreciated from our channel. Very, very subtle distinctions can make huge changes. So this will only be true in general. It may not be true as to you. So as to you, consult a lawyer. But as to general, a trial court's decisions are not, strictly speaking, binding on itself. Trial courts, until the decision's done, until the case is over, judges can revisit questions that have come up before, and it happens on a not infrequent basis as needs change. Evidentiary rulings can be re-examined, for example, or motions in limine can be re-examined. A whole bunch of things can be re-examined. So, strictly speaking, trial decisions aren't binding on themselves. Trial decisions can revisit ground if need has to arise. So, like, causes of action can be dismissed, they can be undismissed. Things can change as situations change. So, until the fat lady sings, as it says, typically, generally, rulings are not binding on the court that's happening. Also, generally speaking, most courts, when they're transferred, like to start from the fresh ground, although that's not necessarily true. That's more of a judge-specific thing. So the state rulings, generally, are not binding on the federal court, except as they might relate to state-specific law. So if the state made some specific ruling on a state-specific legal question before it was transferred, then maybe. Otherwise, probably not. If the federal court makes a ruling, probably doesn't apply the other way around, because it'd be remanded for state-specific proceedings. But that being the case, it depends on your judge. Some judges, want to redo everything. Some judges are more than happy to let other judges do their work for them. Depends on the judge. Probably depends on the day. So, are they binding? Typically, no. Will they be binding in your case? Might be. Consult your lawyer. Stephanie, it depends, yeah. So that's the best it can go. I have found that Buck frown back bumper sticker too. Go Kansas. Nice. In response to the Facebook ban, we've investigated ourselves and conclude we've done nothing wrong. A little bit, that's true, yeah. Becca Thompson, apologize. Thornton. I'll get it right eventually. Becca Thornton. It's a little bit hard for me to read because of the screen position. That's what I'm going with. Becca Thornton says I'm a fan. Well, thank you, Becca. That's very, very kind of you to say. I do appreciate all the people that are fans of me. I appreciate all the people that are here to watch me and help support me and help the channel grow. And it's really, really encouraging to me on a personal level. I've spoken about this from time to time that, that I have issues with depression. And this channel is constantly a source of support for me. And I really, really appreciate everyone who expresses that support. It is validating, and I appreciate the validation, and I enjoy the validation, and I'm glad that I'm saying something of value that you enjoy. And I'm glad that I'm able to say it in a way that is comprehensible and entertaining. And I aim to get better every day. And I think I still have room to grow. I don't think I'm at my peak. But I really, really appreciate the compliment. Thank you. It's very, very nice of you. In response to the Pastafarianism, great stuff here and leads me gendering pondering. I really love Uncivil Law merch with the verbiage, yeah, nah. Love the upload. Yeah, we've got some nice merch ideas with yeah, no, as a great one for the channel, and the home is special and things like that. Yeah, we could do some merch some point. North Star's been listening for over a year. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. The storming of the Capitol was still a safer event than every BLM Antifa riot, and there was more people at the Capitol. I don't know about that, but okay. Pretty sure if Facebook existed in the 70s, they would have banned Biden. Possibly. This year, Biden brushes off China's slaves and he gets passed. There's some truth to that, to be sure. The situation with China and the Uyghurs is not good in any situation. You know, I think about the situation with China and their camps, and North Korea and their camps. And one of the things that I think about when I think about those is I seem to remember there was this sentiment after World War II about never again. Anyone remember that? Anyone remember in the aftermath of World War II with, the mass internment of Jewish populations and extermination and rounding them up in the camps and so forth? Remember how the general sentiment of the world was never again? And you look at the situation in China and you look at the situation in North Korea and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that one. Yeah, I'm not sure we really meant that. Sicknick died due to a stroke. He would not have a stroke if people were not beating with a flagpole. Well, the medical examiner was unable to determine that. How about the Capitol Police officer who had their eye gouged out? Was that unrelated to insurrectionists gouging it out? I am unfamiliar with the Capitol Police officer who had their eye gouged out. I am completely unfamiliar with that, so I couldn't speak to that. Let's see if we can find anything about it in a quick Google search. Police officer eye gouge. All right, let's see what we got. Well, apparently there's someone wanted for that. Okay. The FBI is after someone for doing that, exactly. So apparently that was true. I was unaware. Yeah, he's a really nice picture there too. We'll figure out who it is eventually, man. That's a really nice photograph of that guy. So yeah, it looks like that's pretty related. So we'll prosecute that. That's pretty serious injury. That guy's going to jail for a long time when we find him. Good times. Abel Baker says, I rock. Well, thank you. No, just all the no. That's true. Yeah. I'm sorry, I switched tabs because I was searching for something. Wasn't World War II more about the German question and then invading countries? I never heard the phrase German question. I've heard the phrase Jewish question, but I've never heard the phrase German question. Maybe I don't know my World War II history well enough. And I personally, there is this, what they call it, like uniqueness doctrine, which I don't really buy. This isn't to in any way suggest the Holocaust isn't the true absolute horror show that it is, because it is, but the idea there is this idea that is sometimes expressed that it is a particularly unique or particularly, what would be the right word for it? Well, they call it uniqueness, right? This is particularly, I don't know, horrible thing. And it is horrible unto itself, to be sure, but in the grand scheme of the world and the grand scheme of world history, there are other things that are as horrible, if not potentially more horrible, depending on your frame of reference. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be the worst thing of human history to also be truly reprehensible and something not to be repeated, because it was really bad. That other things that are also worse doesn't make it any less bad. It's pretty bad. So I don't know what it was. I don't know if the Never Again was about this idea of uniqueness doctrine, because I don't know if I quite bought into that concept, because the Chinese killed like 50 to 100 million people during the Mao Dynasty, and some of the stuff that was going on with Genghis Khan was pretty bad, killing the tenth of the world population, and some of the stuff dealing in South America, pretty bad. There's a whole series of bad. There's the world is filled with horror show. Trying to figure out the worst horror show is, not a game that's really worth playing. I don't know if any of that made any sense, but yeah. Maybe we think it's bad because it's recent enough in history that we have video and pretty good documentation of it, and well, I don't know about right now. Oh yeah, there are still survivors of World War II and the Holocaust, so it is still technically within living memory. So maybe it's because of the records and the mechanistic nature of it that makes it particularly horrible. I don't know, but it's. I went to Buchenwald in Germany, the concentration camp in Buchenwald. I think 40,000 people died at Buchenwald. I saw the crematoriums. I saw the hills that they buried the people in. It was suitably depressing. Yeah. Yeah. Legal Bites points out that judges at lower trials also have to deal with pro ses. That's very, very true. Yeah. In response to the F cheer, it's pronounced Mahoney. Noted. Oh, fair enough. No. Good presentation, horrible story. Going back to a regular schedule, someone said nice, and we're down about a week. Now we're back a week out, so we've basically finished it. We basically finished the stream because we're through for all the comments. So I'm not necessarily in a rush to go anywhere. Is there anything in particular you guys want to talk about? We could do another Capitol riot tonight. We could look up a state, pick a state at random that we haven't done. Maybe see if we can find a Rhode Island in there. Get the Rhode Island people in. That might be good. So, is there anything particular you guys want to talk about? I'm in a good spirit today. I'm in a good mood. 87 of you are watching currently. Thank you very, very much for the 87 of you who are watching. I appreciate it. We could talk about my ongoing efforts to try to develop true crime. There's a convention coming into Austin next month relating to true crime. I'm thinking about going to that. It's like a 2-day thing, all about true crime. Go to that, maybe take some notes. I could write it off as a business expense, something to look forward to in my taxes next year. So I got that going for me. What states are left? We covered them yesterday, but I think Nevada, Oregon, there's a lot. Like the entire middle of this country is not done. Like North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, like then Kansas, I think. The entire middle of the country, Northeast. There's like 15 states left or something. Is there a particular butter that tastes better in coffee? Well, unsalted for sure. The normal recommendation here is the Kerrygold. Kerrygold butter is the one that a lot of people like because it is made with used with grass grazed cows. So that's a good thing to look for. Grass grazed cows instead of feed cows. So if you're looking for coffee, for butter for coffee, grass fed is a little bit better. Unsalted, that's a way to go. Irish butter, there you go. Yeah, grass fed, unsalted for bulletproof. Did Congress already make the 2021 tax code? I don't know. And can the current Congress change it? Yes. Yeah, they can always change it. There's nothing stopping them from changing it. Sure. You work for Dave Asprey, the inventor of bulletproof coffee. That's really, really cool, Abby. Excellent. Thank you. That's really, really cool. I drink a version of it pretty most mornings. So during my morning, for my breakfast, it's either bulletproof coffee, which I'll explain in a minute, or scrambled eggs. So when I make my coffee, I use 2 tablespoons of butter, melt it down, put in a tablespoon of XCT oil, and then I put in 2 scoops of protein powder. So I use Optimum casein protein powder because it takes a little longer to dissolve. Then I put in a scoop of Amazing Grass, and I put in a couple scoops of powdered heavy cream. Shake that up, put some ice on it. Really, really good. It's about 500 calories by the time you're done. The protein dissolves really, really slowly, and the butter, so it really, really helps. So that's my take on the bulletproof coffee. So tell your boss that I've modified his recipe to add in casein protein powder. It seems to be working out for me. Do I have an opinion on the Triller and H3 Lawson? It's back, baby. It's back, yeah. Maybe I could do episode 1 tonight because it's back. Because they were dismissed and they refiled. I think it's dumb. But it's good for some clicks. So we'll do that all stuff. Yeah. It's less of a coffee and more of a shake. Fair. Yeah, it's yeah. I make 20 ounces of coffee. I have this Mr. Coffee drip brewer, which makes it into a mug. It makes it into a tumbler. It makes 20 ounces of coffee. Throw that into a blending bottle. It's great. Recommended. Good for clicks. Sounds like a reason to do it, right? Cuts your hunger and feeds your brain. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I switched to Guinness, right? Because Guinness is so low calorie. Right? It's one of the lowest calorie beers you can buy. And it's also quite tasty. And I even got the official glass so that people would stop harassing me about drinking out of bad glassware. So I got the official glass. That's one of the reasons also because it's low alcohol, right? So I don't have to worry about that much with Stream. You think about these things. So yeah, it's one of the lowest alcohol, lowest calorie beers you can buy. And it tastes pretty good. So yeah. You Slash says I can down 6 cups in a single sitting and I still have a steady hand. I think Stephanie's got you beat. Stephanie is the queen of coffee. She drinks disturbing amounts of coffee. She may have a habit. Guinness is like a snack? Could be. All right, I'm going to head off for now. I'm going to probably I'll do either H3H3 or I'll do a Capital Riot thing later, but I've done pretty well. But I've had enough for now. If you're enjoying the stream, please remember to like it. If you haven't already, please subscribe. For 99 cents a month, you too can become a member of the channel to help support it financially. I hope all is well. I've been Uncivil Law. Till later, my friends. Cheers. And goodbye.